You're listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Baachu, and with my co-host Ashley Case, we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry. Today's guest is Neil Philipson. And Neil is an accomplished and results-driven proposal professional with 25 plus years experience in bid management and business development across engineering, construction, automotive, manufacturing, and financial sector. He has a proven track record of success in devising new business strategies, identifying new business opportunities, creating capture plans, making business proposals, and leading multifunctional teams, delivering winning bids in the public, private, and donor-funded sectors. Neil has led and managed major pre-qualification and tender responses for engineering, procurement, and construction, management, and full EPC projects. Neil was chair of the APMP South African chapter in 2013-15, and he's also currently a chapter chair or what we call a research committee co-chair for APMP UK chapter. So welcome, Neil, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Baachu. I'm looking forward to this and to have a good chat with you.
Thank you, Neil. Neil, I can guess the accent. Where were you born and your high school and education?
Sure. Yes, you have. Well, I hope you've guessed the accent. It's not Australian. It is South African.
Correct.
And I was born in Johannesburg, in South Africa, many, many years ago. I attended a all-boys Catholic boys' school called St. Benedict's College. When I finally finished school, I went on and I did a Bachelor of Commerce. Well, I started that, and at the same time, so it was a part-time studies at university, and then during the day I used to work for an auditing company, and I was basically taken on as an article clerk, but I really could not, just wasn't for me. I think it was more what my dad wanted me to do, and I eventually said I just can't do that. And then I went for psychometric testing to see what the best career would be for me, and funny enough, it was to be a teacher and or go into engineering. So I chose to go into engineering, and I got a National Higher Diploma or a Bachelor of Technology in Civil Engineering.
Right.
And I didn't hang around too long in civil engineering to do much designing or actually practice my trade. And then many years later, I did a MBA, just because everybody else was doing them, and I thought it would really give me a career boost. And I pretty much paid for it myself. No company sponsored me, and I had a 18-month-old child at the time. So it was an MBA is quite a lot of work. So how we got through that and we're still married to today is quite incredible, and mostly testament to my wife putting up with me. I've also been certified as a financial planner.
Wow. And
I've got the full suite of APMP certifications, from foundation practitioner, professional, and then I've just recently done the APMP capture practitioner. So now I'm just waiting for APMP to put out the next one and see if it's something I would like to go for. And that's sort of the education that I've been involved in.
Oh, wow, this is by far the most comprehensive response for education that we ever received in the podcast today. But let's go back to that thing that you mentioned, which really struck me. So you are in Johannesburg. You're growing up in Johannesburg, and at some point, you're starting a career, but you realize that isn't for you, and then you decided that I need to go and find what I like. That psychometric testing part. Can you talk me through a little bit more about that? That
Sure.
was very interesting, because everybody has a career choice, and for you to go, for your family to go through the psychometric test for you, and that decided your path, teaching or engineering. Then you went to engineering. it's a much more science-based, data-driven approach on careers, which is very unique. Normally, it's finger in the air. Let me go and try this. It doesn't work. Let me go next one. So that's fascinating for me. Please, can you share a little bit more on that?
Yes, sure. I think I was just so confused. So I actually, in between doing my, auditing article clerk, I actually then went and joined. I had to do my compulsory 2 years military service. And during that time, I had a lot of time to reflect. And then at the end of the 2 years, I came out, I thought, oh my goodness, I still don't know what I want to do. So my dad suggested that I go for a psychometric test, and he sent me to somebody who one of his colleagues at work had sent his son to. I sat there for, I can't even remember if it was about half a day, doing all sorts of different tests, etc. And then at the end of it, I was called into a room with the assessor and my dad, and they just went through, obviously from the, as you said, it's sort of scientific. They thought that best I would be a teacher or go into engineering. And my dad is a quantity surveyor, so he's always been in the construction sort of field. So maybe it was just a follow on from him, but more on the engineering side. And I worked sort of part-time at a school, just doing running the sports and just helping out where I could and taking trips and being a supervisor. And I enjoyed it, but it just didn't, ignite my passion. But I think inherently I've got a teaching element within me, because I always like to teach people new things and teach them, what I've learned. I love to pass on what I've learned. So I think civil engineering was the right sort of field for me, because I know so many engineers that come out of engineering who are multi-skilled and go into all sorts of different careers, even into finance and to CEO level and to, running their own businesses, etc. So I think it gives you a really good grounding in so many things.
Totally, I totally agree. I have an engineering background as well. As we say in India, you first go and become an engineer, then you decide what you do in life.
Very good analogy.
Everybody is an engineer, but then when we go, is an engineer, or if your family has a tradition of being a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer, you have your path laid off. But otherwise, we all try to become engineers. Then we decide, maybe I should study photography, or history or music.
Yes.
Then we just move from there. That's great. So working there, find your way through. You have done your engineering, then you started. You also being a financial planner. That's an off thing. Why financial planning?
So I think it was a set of circumstances that kicked it off. I was involved in. So when I studied civil engineering, I did it on a 6 month working experience, and then 6 months studies, 6 months working, 6 months studies, over 4 years. And right near the end of my 4th year, I was doing the final year of study, or 6 months of study. The construction sector took a massive downturn.
Right.
And so they called all of us who were studying in, and they pretty much made us redundant. And this was about 2 months before. They committed to paying our fees, and so that we could qualify, but we all were made redundant. And so I never really continued my in my civil engineering career. And a family member had a manufacturing company, and they asked me to set up a branch for them in Cape Town, which is about 1,200 kilometers away from Johannesburg. And I said, well, what have I got to lose? I said, as long as you're prepared to understand that I'm not fully experienced. But they said, no, they would guide me. And I went into manufacturing, and we used to manufacture control cables. So, your accelerator cable in your car, or on gear selectors on trucks, or on ships. There's various cables that, operate certain things. So I got involved and I set that business up. And then from there, funny enough, I was involved in 2 different manufacturing companies doing the same thing. And eventually I left the second one with this intention of buying a fast food franchise. So I bought that, and I think that was miserably my biggest university learning I've ever had in my life. I worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, 364 days a year. And I did that for 18 months, and it just drained my finances, and eventually I had to throw the towel in. Sold, well, there wasn't much to sell off besides some equipment, but I still had the lease agreement going. And a family friend phoned and said, I've got a position in a call center within the financial services industry. Would I be interested in it? So I went for the interview and I got the job, and it was really selling investments, but it was predominantly over phone. And I just seemed to have this trusting voice, and people parted with millions of, well, not say parted because that's the wrong term. They invested millions of, in a lot of the recommendations I made, and I really enjoyed it. I was in the top 10 sales in the second year, and a couple of years thereafter. And really that geared me to take the certified financial planning exams in South Africa. So it's just really about the legislation, regulations, and it wasn't an easy exam by any means. And that's how I got into that. But it just did not stimulate me enough, and then I got back into engineering, but more on the business development side of engineering.
Nice. It's amazing to see how adaptable you are, and you just try and you just learn, and then you adapt, then you try, you learn, you adapt. It's amazing. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for sharing that. And now you have done the financial planning, and when did you enter the proposal world?
Officially or unofficially?
Unofficially. Let's say unofficially before we go.
Unofficially, I would say it was when I went into that manufacturing company, because without even realizing it, I was going out to companies, picking up a product, or going out to measure up a cable for their specific vehicle that they were developing, or it was a breakdown. So all I did all the time was liaised with clients, developed product for them, and then I gave them a proposal. It was just really a fee proposal, and maybe just all the benefits of our product over our opposition, etc. So I did that for years. And if you think of selling insurance, you're proposing an option to a person, looking at their needs, understanding their risk profile, and then proposing an option that best suits their financial needs. So unofficially, I think I've been in it for many, many years without actually realizing that I was involved in proposals.
Got it. And for manufacturing, when do you think you officially entered proposals and you start to work full-time on proposals?
So it's after the 8 years or so with the financial services, I got back into an engineering company, a consulting engineers. And the reason why I got the interview was they saw my CV and they thought it was so varied. And they just called me in out of interest, not quite having a job for me, but they just really thought it was an interesting CV and they just wanted to chat to me. And then during the middle of the interview, the CEO walked in and he started talking. He said, "We've got the ideal job for you. You can lead our bid team." And then I had to sort of, understand what their bid team involved.
Correct.
And that's how I got into bidding in a more official way. And it was about 3-4 months later, somehow I found out about APMP, and I went to one of their first events, and I met with one of the founders of APMP in South Africa, which was Sandy Pullinger, and she just reeled me in hook, line, and sinker and got me very involved in APMP. So that was in 2008, I think it was, roughly, that I really got officially involved with APMP.
Nice. And you started as a full-time proposal person or manage a big team. Then you also started in APMP as a member. Let's just talk a little bit more about the journey. So you're still in South Africa, and you're becoming a member of APMP, but you then gradually progressed, or you became the chair of South African chapter. Is that right?
Yes. So Sandy asked me to be a member, and I was a member for maybe 6 months to a year when she asked me whether I'd consider standing on the committee. And I joined the APMP South African Chapters Committee, and she stood for, I think it was 2 years as the chair, and then I was nominated as the next chairperson, so I took that over as a role. I also, during that time, became a director of the APMP South African chapter. We had to register the company because funds were coming in and out, from memberships and events, and we had to pay for certain things. So we had to set it up officially. So I was actually one of the directors of the South African chapter. During the course of my chairman, just before I became a chair, we sort of twinned with the NCA Washington chapter, and that chapter was there. They sort of were our sister chapter, and they helped us to grow and develop, and if we had any teething problems or issues that we wanted to discuss, we could easily discuss it with them, and they were very reciprocal back to us. And there was a member on their committee in their chapter called Brenda Christ, and she's proposed to our South African chapter, why don't you send somebody to come and give a talk at our NCA Washington chapter event or conference. So nobody else wanted to go, so I put my hand up and I said I would go, and that's how I got to know the actual, the APMP from an American perspective, and I met a whole lot of people and just started to develop more and more contacts through that. And then I brought that information back to South Africa. I spoke to people, got them all excited about it. So it really gave me a boost, and I think gave the South African chapter a bit of a boost because, we could share stuff. I know Sandy had also been over to some of the BidCons much earlier on, and so she also brought information back. So in that way, we ignited the South African chapter, and we slowly started to build our membership. I met Rick Harris. He said I should consider running for the international board and whether I'd be interested. I know Sandy had run for it, so they just wanted to keep continuity of having. They didn't have many international chapters at that stage, so I put myself forward, and eventually I was elected onto that committee, and I spent 2 years very involved in that. And in doing that, I also came across to the various BidCons that were running during that time. It was Chicago, Seattle, and Boston. So, and I gave further presentations at Chicago and Seattle. So that was really the sort of experience, the time that I've been in APMP. I also after leaving the international board, I stepped up and helped on the membership research committee, which is just one of the committees that form part of the international board. And I co-chaired, well, still co-chair that particular committee. And anybody within the APMP who wants to set up any questionnaires or want to do surveys, etc., our committee is really there to just support and help where we can on those surveys. When I left South Africa, it was about 18 months ago, I stepped down as the director of the APMP and handed over to very capable individuals who are really running a great ship with lots of things happening. So it's always good to see that things just continue, and it's great to see how they've grown in leaps and bounds. And I came over to the UK, and I've just switched membership to the UK chapter. I attended their first conference just before the lockdown, which was great. I met a good couple of people, some that I'd met previously at other conferences internationally. And I've slowly just taken my time because I had to settle into the UK. It's quite an adaptation. And so I didn't jump in boots and all to start with. And I'm slowly helping now, volunteering where I can, especially on professional development, because that's where I feel my strength comes from, just from what I've been through and the journey that I've taken.
Totally. That's so much contributions, not just in South Africa where you started in Bitcoin to APMP International Board, all the way to now. You didn't even stop. People relocate and they try to settle in. You relocated and you joined APMP UK Board. That tells a lot about you, Neil. I mean, like it's so looking back, with these years of contributing to APMP, being a veteran of APMP, any interesting memories or any interesting stories that comes to your mind? It could be Bitcoin, it could be South African chapter, or it could be UK, or it could be anything. Any one or two incidents, memorable ones?
Well, I think it's always memorable for anybody who's traveling into the US to go to those conferences, because it's just such good fun and you learn so much and you interact with people.
Correct.
I think it's always quite nerve-wracking being a presenter, but once you've done it once or twice, it's such a good feeling, and you are passing on knowledge, and people appreciate it and come talk to you afterwards. I think the one thing at the end of, now I just can't think whether it was Chicago or Seattle, Rick Harris approached about 5 or 6 of us, and I can't remember the title of what it was, but right at the end of the conference, we each stood up and you just go through your you select a set of slides and you've got 5 minutes, and all you do is you just talk on a topic that you enjoy. And then as soon as I finish, the next person's up and they're talking through their slides, 5 minutes, and then you go on to the next one and they 5 minutes. And we did this one after the other. So it was one of the first times that it was trialed at BidCon. And that was just such an amazing experience. And I shared about rhino poaching in Africa and the devastation that it causes, and I showed some of the gory pictures, and I think it really got people's attention. And I had loads of people come to me afterwards and ask more about rhino poaching. Other people spoke about various things in their lives and what was going on. So it was just such a powerful experience to just be able to stand up there and just talk off the cuff, and you had to time your slides. There was no stopping them like you can, you weren't in control of them. So a good practice in how to manage your time in presenting slides. So that was one really memorable experience. I suppose another one was when we in South Africa, we approached the the purchasing arm of the government, and I know Larissa Cornelis took this over after I'd left. She sort of resurrected it in a more defined way and really drove it. But I was one of the original people to really reach out to them and to really drive it and get them to do an NDA with us, and that we could just meet around a table and discuss issues around what, we sit on different sides of the fence, and they gave us opinion of how our bids were, and we gave them an opinion of what their ITTs or their RFPs were like. So it was good dialogue between the two, so we could go away and learn from each other. And I don't think that's always possible. So, and it was, within the association, it wasn't me coming from X company and trying to influence or anything. It was our association, their association, and it was members of each. And I think it did help, and I think Larissa's continued it, and which is really good. So I think those are two things that really stand out for me within APMP.
Brilliant. And I think while you're talking about it, I was visualizing as if you are on the stage and I'm sitting there listening to you. And also when you're talking about, South Africa, the procurement consultancy. Yes, Larissa was here, I think, a few months ago. That's one of the guests, and she was talking about it. Thank you for sharing that, Neil. So one last question before we actually move on to know a little bit more about you. So you mentioned that you pretty much covered all the certification, or you have covered all the certification. Talk us through your journey: foundation, practitioner, professional, capture practitioner, fellow. Fellow is not a certification, but you know what? That's the contribution that you have shared. I know learning is a passion for you, but talk us through the journey as well, Neil. It's
sure. Yeah. I think for me, John Williams came out to one of our conferences, and he ran together with Sandy Pullinger the foundation course, and I got wind of this because I was a member, and I thought, no, I really need to now get my foundation. I'd become the member, and so I sat on that course. Well, I studied first through the Shipley's. At that stage, we were using Shipley's manual, and that was a great experience. John he has a great way of presenting the information. And what was so fantastic about foundation, and this is why I recommend it to anybody who's just starting out, you tend to sit in a company and you do A, B, and C, and you don't always connect the dots. And when you do your foundation certification, suddenly all those dots get connected, and you understand, okay, that's why we do this, and that's why we do this, and that's why we do that. And so it's just such an upliftment, and suddenly you realize the skills that you've got and how much more value you can actually add to your organization. And so foundation for me is everybody should have that who's going to be in proposals. Practitioner for me was, I did the old form where you had to fill in, I think it was 250 words on about 30 odd questions, and and give examples, etc. And for me, I'm not sure what the new multiple choice questions are like, but that for me was most probably one of the greatest things that I did, because it gave me clear idea of what I was good at, what I was weak at, and what I needed to do to improve on those weaknesses so that I was, in a better position. So it really was a benchmark in my career as to where I was within the proposal sort of industry and field, and what more I could do to improve myself. And by improving myself, I was improving my team and improving, the chances of the company winning more business. So that was great. I then got to professional, and the project that I spoke about earlier with the procurement entity, I used that as my example, and I had Kathy Day and Charlie Devine on, who were my interview panel. And it was so, I don't know, it was just a really exciting time to talk about what we were doing. It was innovative. It had got results, so it was measurable, and it was just such an amazing feeling to talk about it. Then you realize that you'd actually contributed. And I think both Charlie and Kathy Day really, thought similar, because they phoned me back and told me that I had actually passed the professional,
Yes.
which was a great feather in my cap, because that's, I don't think any of them are easy, because, when you're doing the foundation, you are at that level, entry level, unless you've been in proposals for many years and you're just doing foundation. But generally, a person who's sort of wet behind the ears in proposals, it's quite intimidating. Practitioner was at that stage in its own right, because of the number of questions. It had its own difficulties. And professional was, you really had to have a good project, and I was passionate about it, and I think that came across. Then last year, I saw the capture practitioner. I thought, well, I'm involved in capture in my business. Let me get onto it. So I started looking into it. I did the online exam, the practice one, and I thought, ooh, okay, maybe I don't know as much as I do, or maybe I'm just getting confused with terminology. So I once again decided to do a course, and I did it once again with strategic proposals here in the UK with Graham Ablett, and it was really a great, just a refresher, and it gave me a lot more confidence. But I'd say out of all 4 certifications, I would say the capture practitioner gave me the most grey hairs. I was pretty stressed out that day when I wrote it. And when you press that submit button and you just wait for that result to pop up, and it's provisional, but when you see that you've passed, the sense of relief was enormous. So yes, it's definitely not for the faint-hearted, and I think you've really got to be involved in capture for quite a while. And if you're based in the UK or outside of the US, just double check your terminologies and don't get mixed up. But it is a capture practitioner really challenges you. You've got to know your stuff before attempting that.
Totally. Thank you for sharing that, Neil. And I think at every level, it kind of tests you a different skill set, but I'm glad that you enjoyed all 4, and thanks for sharing your experience on this. As a feed into our Nutters round in honor of Howard Nutt, what we call rapid random fire question round, tell us 3 things not many people know about you.
Not many people know that I served in the military for 2 years, and I was a trained infantry soldier, which gave me certain skills and taught me certain things, and also showed me man's inhumanity to man, and how we can be so, unkind to each other in so many ways. So I think that was one thing. Another thing that really is close to my heart was I was a Boy Scout. So I went through what they call Cubs, got what they call a Leaping Wolf, which was the highest achievement. I then went into Scouts, and I got, in South Africa, it was called a Springbok Scout and a Chief Scouts Award. And I got both of those. So I always seem to be achieving things when it's when it's out there. It's like a target, and I've got to achieve it. So I was very involved in Scouts, and then I became a Scout Master, and I led a Scout troop for a while. So very much outdoors. And then I'm also, which people most probably not know, is that I'm actually a deacon in the Catholic Church. And that also entailed about 7 years of study to get to be ordained a permanent deacon in the Catholic Church. So over and above my day job, I've also got that ministry that I fulfill as well.
Wow, that's so diverse. Scout, church, military. Amazing. So let's just talk about it. So, how often? Okay, let's go from the back. Church.
Yes.
So, why church? Why this learning? I think that's completely out of blue. I think did you have religious upbringing, or why
Yeah.
this? Yeah.
Yes, I did have a religious upbringing. My mom was she was a staunch Catholic, and we had to go to church every week. And yet my dad is not a believer, but an incredible human being. And I just found it gave me balance and direction in my life, and something to fall back on when times got tough. So when I was in what grade? I was in my second last year of school. I actually felt a calling to become a priest in the Catholic Church, and I sort of pursued it for a while, and then I just never felt comfortable about it, so I didn't continue. And but many years ago, I've been ordained just over 11 years, and 7 years before that, during my studies, that's when I felt called again to become more part of the church, be more active in it, and to just help people, the marginalized, the poor, and yeah, that's where it really came upon. And it does call a lot of my time, and I've got a very supportive wife who, I'm out sometimes in the evenings helping people and counseling and running courses and being involved. So it's admirable that she's there to always support me.
Nice. Scout. So,
The Scouts.
So Scouts is amazing. I think, do you play any instruments or something, or is there any adventurous thing that comes in your mind for being a scout?
Yeah, so pretty much adventurous. I've always been a nature-loving person. I've always liked to go into nature. I love hiking. I love camping. And Scouts just teaches you all those skills, from how to pitch a tent, how to cook, how to make fires. We used to have camping competitions, and we used to make rafts and spend a weekend out on the dam or the lake on a raft. You slept out there and you made your food out there on the raft, hiking in the mountains for 7-8 days. In fact, the one I did a challenge in Cape Town, which was 11 days that we hiked. And that was the most amazing experience. We took a group of about 8 scouts, and I was sort of 18 years old. So I was in my last year of scouting. And we hiked for 11 days to different checkpoints, and we did survival skills, eating locusts, eating mapani worms, seeing if you could handle that. All sorts of activities. And I think scouting is such a good thing. It teaches you how to work as a team, how to deal with difficult individuals, how to get along together under very challenging circumstances. That sometimes you're under competition rules, sometimes you're under stress. When you're mountain climbing up a rock face, you've got to have immense trust in the person who's belaying you from below, or who's pulling you up from above, or there's so many things that comes to trust. And so Scouts really gave me a very good grounding. And if you think of it, all of those things I've discussed, you need in proposals. It's very structured. You need to be able to adapt. You need to manage a process, and everything that you're taught in Scouts is a skill on how to do things correctly, properly, how to treat somebody for first aid, how to tie knots. It's all about left hand over right hand, back over the left hand, through this loop, etc. And if you think of it, a proposal is like that. If you don't follow the process, what you do, you get a knot that doesn't work. And it's the same if you don't follow the process in proposals, you get something that doesn't win or doesn't get submitted.
Totally.
So yeah, that's Scouts.
Nice. So that's super interesting. Super interesting. So let's now go for an accelerated mode. So
Yes.
Fast forward. Don't think too much. Whatever comes into your mind, let's just go for that. Yeah. Question number 1. If you could become invisible for a day, what would you do?
Yeah, I think I would be invisible in my son's school classroom. I'd love to hear all the stories, and whether he's a troublemaker or whether he sits diligently, whether who he sits next to, who he interacts with, what sort of things they do, what sort of things they say. I think that's what I would do if I could be invisible for a day.
Got it. So what's that one food you could never bring yourself to eat?
Brussels sprouts.
Nice.
I've really battled to eat them, but I know at Christmas time everybody here in the UK really loves them. I just don't, and I eat most things, but I just really don't enjoy Brussels sprouts at all. And peanut butter. I'll eat peanuts, but I cannot stand eating peanut butter.
I agree with you on the first one, but second one, you're now not my friend anymore, Neil. I can eat peanut butter all day, every day. So that's okay. That's okay. 1-1. That's a draw. So let's move to the next one. So, which pop music group would you rate as a perfect 10? What music group did you listen to? Do you normally listen to?
Oh, I always listen to the Beatles. I just love their different type of music and different songs, and it's if we're cooking in the kitchen, we're always fighting as to which music we should play. But on a Sunday, I always tend to get the option to play my music, and I always play the Beatles or Queen. One of those two groups. Really, that's what the music I enjoy.
Totally. I can literally have listeners nodding their head vigorously. Yes, Neil. Yes, we also agree with you. That's brilliant. So, what's on your bucket list? I know for the past 12 to 14 months or so, we all have been locked down, or not, to a certain extent. Forget about COVID. I'm sure we all will come out of that. What's on your bucket list? If things go normal, what would you like to do? Do you have a list?
Yes, I think one of the things is that my wife and I would like to buy an RV and pack up and just go around the UK, and then from the UK across the channel into Europe, and just travel around Europe and stop where we want to, have no agenda as such, and just experience life out of an RV, stop at hotels, stop at pubs, camping grounds, explore different things. If we really like a place, maybe stay a week there. If we otherwise just move on, day after day. And I think that's one of the things on my bucket list. I'd also like to go to the Serengeti National Park and just really experience that. It's something I've always thought was great. And the Okavango Delta in Botswana. I'd love to go there on one of those outboard canoes and just canoe around, and there's always a chance of being bumped by a hippo or a crocodile or coming across a herd of elephants, but that just excites me, doesn't make me fearful, and I think I would enjoy that. I think those are the two things, really traveling and just exploring new things and experiencing new things. We only live once, and if you don't get out there and experience the things that you enjoy, I think you're missing a trick.
That's it. That's well said. That's well said. If we finish this interview and then you step outside the office and you find a lottery ticket that ends up winning $1 billion, what would you do with that money?
$1 billion. I could buy my RV and I could travel Europe, Asia, Russia, down into Australia, New Zealand, right across into India, or even the Middle East and Hong Kong. I think I would just really spend a lot of time traveling. It would give me that option to travel. I think quite a big chunk I would give into charities, because people are always doing some great work in various charities, and I know their charities are looking for sponsorship to continue doing the work. And yeah, I definitely look at donating it and volunteering more time with them, having that sort of money in my pocket. I don't know whether I'd necessarily give up my job, because I really enjoy it, but I wouldn't be as pressurized because I'd be in a reasonably good financial position. But maybe work 4 days a week, 3 days off, and just be able to travel and do things that I would want to do. So yeah, and invest the rest.
Yes.
So that I could continue to do that.
Correct. That's a good said. Well said. So, who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Wow. I think definitely my mom and dad. They're both incredible people who've taught both myself and my sister how to really treat people, how to respect people, and they've taught us so much. And I think it's more through their example. You know, nothing is ever too much for them if people come to them. And you know, if I could just be half as good as they have been in their lives, it would be, you know, I'd feel fulfilled. They've really taught me a lot. And I think my desire to learn, my desire to travel, my desire to live life to the fullest has really come from both of them. I mean, my dad's 83 now, and my mom is close to 80, and they still travel and they're still active. If I could be like that, it would be amazing. My dad plays golf 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to gym 3 times a week, and he walks 5 kilometers every day. So
Wow.
he's just, you know, super motivated. And if you actually met him, you wouldn't say he's 83, you would say he's maybe 70, if that.
Mm.
And my mom is just, you know, she's always been there for us and given us good morals and good upbringing. I think a career, it's always a difficult one. You know, I think people influence you in your career, and sometimes you don't even realize it. But maybe years later, you'll think, oh, I remember somebody telling me that, and you'll think back to a particular person. I've never, you know, most companies have these development programs, or you know, once a year you sit with your manager, etc. And I've never found those particularly successful.
Yep.
And other people I've spoken to also haven't. You really got to find a nugget of a manager to you know, to inspire you, etc. I think everybody's so busy. So I think you mostly find it's loads of different people that actually influence your career through different phases. One particular one was that first manufacturing company I joined. Their owner was dyslexic, and he had just started his own business. He hadn't finished school. And just what he achieved through hard work, perseverance was amazing, you know, and he just taught me never to give up. And, you know, when bad times come, you just work your way through them. And yeah, he was quite inspirational in that way.
Nice.
I'll never forget, I was working on a project and I was lying down tightening a bolt on something, but I was doing it in a sort of a lazy way. And he called me aside and he said, when you're going to do some work, make sure you do it properly and that people can see that you're putting the best effort into your work. Don't be sloppy in your work. And I never, ever forgot that in my life. So whenever I do things, you know, I sometimes catch myself slouching in front of a computer and I think of him, and then suddenly I straighten up and I, you know, become more alert and attentive to. And then the last person that, well, there's 2 people from a APMP perspective. A lot of people in APMP have influenced me, definitely, but 2 particular people I would say is Brenda Christ from the NCA chapter.
Nice.
She invited me when I came over to stay with her and her husband. which was just, I mean, the hospitality was absolutely amazing. And the second time I went to America and we went through Washington, my wife came with me, and she once again put us up. She would not hear of us staying in a hotel or anything. And her and her husband, Steve, were just absolutely amazing. But over and above that, you know, just their hospitality, she was also quite inspirational, and she motivated me to get my practitioner. Without her, I don't think I would have got it. And then the other person is old Charlie Devine. You know, whenever I met him at conferences, when I worked with him on a couple of committees, and he was always inspirational and positive, and you know, he just lighted up a room. He just had that manner about him, which was just amazing, and a lot to learn from him, and Howard Nutt as well. I mean, there's so many people you could talk about, but I think those people really influenced me in my career in proposals.
You're totally blessed with all the love and support, Neil. That's the reason you're giving it back. You know, it's so nice. It's so nice. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Stay blessed. So
thank you.
Beautiful. So what have you observed lately that reminded you that people are kind?
So in the UK, I stay in a terrace of about 30 houses. And through this lockdown, especially the vulnerable people, it's amazing how we all set up a WhatsApp group, and people have been able to ask on that WhatsApp group for various things. And between us, we've all helped each other. So if somebody was suspected of having symptoms and they had to isolate, self-isolate, the rest of us rallied around, and we would go and get their groceries and drop it at their door. And you know, it was never too much to actually help people. It was absolutely amazing. And the other thing that is very close to my heart is there was a lady in South Africa who ran a soup kitchen for the poor and marginalized people in their informal settlements. And right through lockdown, she was arrested once by the police for feeding people. They tried to stop her feeding people, and she just came back, and she came back, and she came back. And it's amazing how many people donated food stuff to her, and she just continued to feed. I think between her and her team, they cooked 1,500 meals a day just to keep people fed through this time when the economy is flat and people didn't have a food in their stomach. So yeah, she was inspirational as well, just that people can do so much good. And she's of ill health herself, but she just never ever stops going.
Totally, Neil. Wow, that's very, very, very inspirational and very very real, actually, isn't it? We always read about people. There are so many heroes who live next to us, and yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Last 3 questions before we wrap up. Looking back, what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
I don't know if I can think of anything that I'd known. I think my career has been a journey. And yes, my dad forced me into, well, I wouldn't say forced me, but he sort of convinced me that finance was the career for me and I should go into it. Now, you know, I didn't do it. But even having gone down that path, I learned from it so much, and I only realized it 10, 15 years later that what I'd learned there was helping me in my various roles that I was doing. So I don't think there's anything that I would actually think of. You know, obviously proposals is something new in my life. Well, it's just over, you know, formally over 12 or so, 13 years. Maybe if APMP, if I'd known about APMP earlier, maybe that career path would have taken off in a more defined role much earlier, and I would have maybe added more value. But no, I don't think there's anything that I wish I'd really known. I think everything that I've done has been a learning process, and if you don't learn and you don't bump your head every now and again, you never learn either. So you've got to make mistakes. And somebody tells me that then if you don't learn from your mistakes, well, then that's something that you're missing out on in life. And yeah, so short answer is I really can't think of anything.
And that's nicely said, because you just evolved as you go, and every single opportunity you learn, you adapted, you even moved from one country to a new country, and it's amazing. I think looking back, yes, we could have accelerated the pace of change in our life rather than we did something, but that's always in hindsight, right?
Yes.
Totally. Nice. So we have talked about your early life, education, South Africa, how you learned your life, your scout career, your army career. And then we talked about you were also part of the church, APMP, your proposal career, tons of certifications and educations that you had, your family. So blessed, lots of love and support in your life, Neil. What's next for you? What are you looking forward to in the future?
I think giving back is the stage of where I am, and that's why I've volunteered on the professional, to help the UK on the professional development side, and getting organizations to understand that APMP is a really worthwhile association, and that their members need APMP in order that their business can improve and that they can win more business. So I definitely think that's one of the areas that I would like to focus on, as long as my current role allows me to, because I'm extremely stretched every day and very, very busy. And I think most importantly is looking at professional development within my own organization. I work for Mott MacDonald. We're a multinational company. We at least 16,000 people around the globe, and just within the UK business, there's so much that I can add value to from a bidding and capture management perspective, and just really bringing people who are starting off in our company, who are on the career progression of going into bids and proposals, whether they're engineers or whether they people purely focused on proposals. It's just, what value can I add? How can I make their lives easier, simpler, maybe more process driven? Because people don't realize that if you don't follow the process, it's amazing how bids derail. But when you follow the process, wow, the bid actually gets out 2 days before time, because it's been planned. And I don't think engineers understand that we in our profession, we are like project managers. We're running a project and we're damn good at it, and they better understand that and actually look up to us and respect us for what we do. So definitely getting out there, selling our profession, both internally and externally, because it's given me a great career. I love what I do, and I want to share that passion with others so that they love what they do.
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. Neil, we are at the end of the podcast episode. Is there any part of your life or career that you missed, or is there anything else you would like to share before we close the episode?
I think just one thing. I've mentioned wildlife a couple of times. So right from a young age, when I was 18 or 19, I used to work with Wilderness Leadership School, and I used to take trails into game reserves, and we used to walk within the wild. And one of the times that we were out there, we got charged by a rhino. And the first thing you do when you get charged by a rhino is you find the nearest tree and you climb up it. So whenever you walk, you're always looking for trees. And this one lady unfortunately chose the wrong tree, which is a thorn tree. And she literally climbed that thorn tree in maybe 30 seconds flat with this rhino charging around. But it took us over 40 minutes to get her out of the tree afterwards. And shame, I really felt sorry for her. But it's just a moment that I'll never forget. And when Rick Harris came to South Africa and he journeyed to the conference, I took him to one of the game reserves, and this time we stayed in the car, didn't go out walking because you weren't allowed to. But I showed him rhinos and lions, and especially the white lions, and he was in awe. First time I think he'd really come to encounter it more in a wildlife area. So wildlife is also a passion for me, and we just got to make sure that we continue to look after it. We've been there to look after it, and sometimes we don't, and I think it's important that we pass on to our generations that we look after it.
It's amazing. Thanks for sharing about nature and wildlife. Totally, I think, and what COVID has told us is we all live together, and there are so many beautiful videos where how wildlife came into forest, or even came into where it belongs to, because humans weren't disturbing them. Right?
Yes.
So it's so beautiful to see that. That's nice. So thank you, Neil. Thanks for joining today. It's been an absolute privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you, your family, your loved ones, and everybody, including Mark McDonald and your church and everybody whom you touch, all the good health and happiness. Please continue to inspire bidding proposal industry colleagues. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, stay happy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit baachuscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Case,
Baachu Sundaram,
signing off.